Uganda will not be ruled by a civilian, says the CDF. Are these signs of a bleak future? My name is Douglas Onen. I'm your host or moderator for tonight's conversation. Joining me to discuss this very intriguing and interesting conversation about a possible military rule and possibly a feudal state in this country is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us unpack the conversation and give perspective to the topic that we're discussing today. So in no particular order, I'll let ahead to my panelists introduce themselves, then we can start the conversation. I'll begin from my extreme right to my immediate right, and then we can start the conversation. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Jack. It's an honor to be here once again and to deliberate for the nation. My name is Kawere Mugwanya. I'm a student at Kyambogo University, serving as the finance minister and a fourth year finalist. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking to having an interesting conversation with you, Thomas, once again. Mr. Gil President, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Drake. Our dear viewers, a good afternoon and a good morning. My name is Reagan Mwebesa, a fourth year student in my semester 2 doing land surveying and geoinformatics at Kyambogo. I currently preside over the Students Guild with a population of around 37,000 Ugandans and international students. It would be a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to come and share views on behalf of those I represent and on my own behalf. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you, Mr. President. The only lady on the show today, you're most welcome.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to be here today, and my name is Byonanebye Joan. I'm a student at the International University of East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to also engaging and getting a perspective in this conversation. The man wearing Uganda flag, black, yellow, red. You're most welcome.
Thank you. I'm Alex Wamakota. I'm from Makerere University. I'm a former guild minister, former speaker of government-sponsored students in Uganda, but currently I'm the acting executive secretary of New Bold Vision. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, in no particular order, we need to unpack this conversation. This conversation is one that requires us to interrogate, first and foremost, our history. And understanding the history that our country has been greatly plagued with numerous coups, with numerous military rule, but also with lack, for lack of a better word, I would say, lack of peaceful transition or transfer of power from one government to the other. Right from 1962 to date, we have not seen any peaceful transition of power. The only time that somewhat seemed to happen was in 1980, but those elections were greatly contested. And up to date, we are still under military rule. And I think that also runs across most African countries that we have today. But today, our concern is in Uganda, primarily emanating from the comments or statements that were made by the CDF General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the first son of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So I'll begin with you, Mr. President Reagan, getting a historical context and putting this debate into context. Take us back into history to understand where this particular conversation emanates from.
Yes, thank you, Drake. I am going to clearly try to break it down. Traditionally and historically, Uganda has been dominated by the leadership of army men or men in uniform. However, we were once led by a civilian who of course was later overthrown, maybe because he didn't have a lot of training or expertise when it comes to defense forces, and that is Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. It is true that historically one of the best presidents of the Republic of Uganda, Idi Amin, who so many tag a lot of things, was an army man who even went as far as declaring himself a field marshal. But I do believe that is the opinion of the CDF. Maybe he is talking on behalf of the defense forces, but I don't think it is the opinion of the majority of the Ugandans. We all understand where the appointment of the CDF comes from constitutionally, and that is from the Chief of Defense Forces. For that, the Chief of Defense Forces is appointed by the President. So I do believe their opinion is that they see themselves worthy. But when you look at the bigger picture of Uganda, the agriculture sector, when you look at the transport sector, when you look at the tourism sector, when you look at all the sectors that feed this economy, none of them is dominated by army people. So I do believe Uganda has reached a state where we have intellectuals that have the capacity to lead this nation, regardless of being affiliated or attached to the army. I want to really believe, and so many other Ugandans I hope can join me in the same, that this must be an opinion of the CDF, and it is really absurd that such a statement can be made by a gentleman who is not supposed to even indulge himself in political affairs of this country. Unless, if we are in a transition, they usually say, of turning the army into a picture of a group of civilians in uniform enforcing peace, we can maybe believe. But as it stands, it is an absurd statement and a very mean statement to many young Ugandans like myself and those that are aspiring to lead this nation one day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, just from where Reagan has ended, in terms of giving us the context that he gets from that particular statement, I would also like to first and foremost start by picking your insights on what you think about the topic, stemming from a historical perspective.
Well, I would like to begin by saying God is good and is a great one. I'll begin with the 1996 Constitution. I think the people that sat down and constructed such a beautiful thing had true intentions for the country, genuine. They had love and passion for the country. But you see, with time, it has been changed to people's interests, to serve people's interests. And I don't think the people that are in power currently have the best interests for Ugandans. Now, Article 208, that is clause 1 and 2, will tell you that the UPDF shall be a non-partisan component of this country, and that the country is supposed to be ruled by civilians, and the army shall be limited to defense only. And they will have no input, because for them theirs is to serve the state, which is the people. Yeah. Now, if you start making such a statement, that means that you are undermining the rule of law. And that means that you have gone against the Constitution of Uganda and you have gone against the civilians. Is that what he's trying to say right now, that we civilians do not have a say in what goes on into the country? Or is he above the law itself? Well, he's the only one who can tell us what exactly he meant by that. But from our perspective, and if you look at the prominent politicians, let us take an example of Honorable Segona, that clearly stated that this is unlawful because you're not supposed to be partisan or participate in partisan politics. Because when you see even UPDF, when it is being, when it was being given a spot in Parliament, it clearly states that they will be only limited for security and defense reasons. That is why they're in Parliament. And they will not either fall on the government side or the opposition side. That's why they sit in that column of theirs. Now, it is a bit confusing that their head now is showing us that he falls, or for him, he's part of government and he endorses the government's candidate. Then where does this leave the preaching of Pan-Africanism? Because what does Pan-Africanism entail? It talks about good governance, it talks about liberation, unity. Then that means this undermines, that statement alone undermines everything. It undermines the institutions of democracy, it undermines the international relations of Uganda, because all these things, when you look at the basis of everything, it is human rights. To give you foreign aid, it's human rights, it is good governance, it is unity, it is peace. That is what they focus on while giving you all these aids. And for a person not to sit down and think about such a statement, how heavy it is, and then you see MPs in Parliament, on the government side, trying to bring that statement, to give it parameters that are so minimal, in the sense that now the CDF has managed to say that the war is between his father and the leader of opposition, but yet it has greater implications than what they're narrowing it down to.
Sure.
I think we should try to not narrow it down and look at the bigger implication and what it means to make such a statement.
All right. Thank you. Alex, just before I get to Joan, what I'm interested in is the legal framework. My brother Thomas mentioned that the Constitution is something that provides or represents the spirit of the people. And the spirit of the people under Articles 1 and 2 says that power belongs to the people. Such a statement being uttered or being stated by the CDF, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, embodies or signifies what I would term as a defiance to the Constitution. Taking note that, of course, his position is one that is appointed by the executive, and relying on principles of law, which is on separation of power, that is the executive standing alone, the judiciary and the legislature, but working interconnectedly. Such a statement in its own self, first of all, defies separation of power, but also, two, signifies that the people, or the civilians in this case, do not have any power, of which the Constitution says we have the power. So what do you make of that statement? But also, what does that mean for we the civilians or the people of Uganda?
Okay, thank you. I think I'm one of the people that didn't take that tweet very, very serious, because I believe, as a Ugandan, as Alex, I have a right to my expression, to my opinion, however stupid it could be for the public. And neither is Muhoozi an angel. There is a CDF and Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who are two different people. So I also want to believe that there is a spokesperson of the Defense Forces, who is Felix Kulaije, who has a deputy, Dewa Kiki. So I don't think it's a position of the forces. Our forces are over 45,000 people, with I think around 35,000 in reserve. I believe we normally hold the forces ransom over acts of people that are not even 100. 2-3 people will do silly mistakes in society, and we have the whole UPDF painted. So I'm one of the people that has been seeing the CDF make various tweets around very many people. He had made silly tweets about women, which I don't agree with. He has made tweets with that taint the relationship with our neighbors, which I don't find fine. But I also believe he's human. The same Constitution gives him the mandate to speak his mind. I remember when Honorable Sereko was bringing that computer misuse, there are some there are some things.
Alex, if I may, it's true that the Constitution gives him the right to speak up his mind.
Yes.
But you also remember, as a person who is holding such a position in this country, you are expected to behave in a particular order, in a particular manner. You do not expect, you as Alex, let's say one day you're president, and you have Alex, the image that you portray in public could possibly be different from what you do in private. Now, would you therefore go ahead and portray all your behaviors that you do in private into the public scene? Because people will still believe, because you're more or less a leader.
Yes, I think I was coming to that. I want to draw now my biggest blame to the appointing power, because Muhoozi is a CDF because the commander-in-chief chose that among all people in the UPDF, it's Muhoozi that can make a good CDF. You get? So if he starts to act in a way that is not professional enough for that office, I expect the commander-in-chief to interject. I want society to stop looking at Muhoozi as a very big issue. when it comes to these posts and so on and so on. Because the person that appoints him is undoubtedly a very brilliant man. And we see no reason why he should keep him in that office when he is making these mistakes. Now, when he makes these mistakes and our concentration is on Muhoozi, we forget to discuss the cause of what is happening. And we choose to treat the signs. You understand? If the CDF wakes up one day and makes a post, one of the most hurting posts was the post against Kenya. We have a very good working relationship with the country. We are a landlocked country. We expect our goods to pass via Kenya. And he wakes up and makes a post that tantamounts with the international relations between the two countries. And the commander-in-chief still keeps him in that office and chooses to go and apologize to the president as him, which I didn't find okay. I think there needed something, like maybe if that was the first time it was happening, then the second time it's coming that he's giving literally a position of the forces on something that the forces should not have a position on, then the commander-in-chief had to act. So if the commander-in-chief is not acting, my biggest blame goes to the commander-in-chief for keeping the son in an office where he is not capable of.
Okay. All right, Joan, we're still understanding the conversation and from the historical perspective that we have gotten from Thomas and Reagan, but also from the legal background that we have gotten from my brother Alex and his opinion as to why he apportions the blame to the appointing body and the president. I would also like to pick your insights on whether you think such a statement poises us with a bleak future as a young lady and as a young person.
Well, thank you very much. So, my point of view is such a statement from the CDF is not right. But if we go back to our politics in Uganda and how far we've come and where we are going, apparently, we believe it's the politics between His Excellency the President and our opposing government, which is NUP, I believe. So, to my point of view, when I look at such tweets from a son to the leading government, I believe they're just drawing us aback. This is a government that is autocratic. We believe we no longer have freedom to speech. We no longer have rights at some point of time. And when such a statement comes into the public, I believe we are now drawing attention to things that we actually shouldn't be drawing attention to. Now, the opposing government will look at, are we coming into power, or maybe the military is going to come into power, forgetting things like education, health, maybe infrastructure. Those are the things we should be looking at right now, because I believe this is the political season. But if we look at things like a civilian or the military coming into power, then we are forgetting our mission as maybe opponents or as the civilians. Because I believe as a youth, we have a major role to play in this political game. So if as the youth, apparently I believe most of the youth are opposing the government, though most of them just shadow it and want to be under the government because of some fears. That is where discussions like, are we Pan-Africanists, are we looking at democracy, will come in. So to my point of view, I'll be like, Uganda is no longer democratic. But if I'm taken maybe to parliament, or if I'm looking at myself growing up and being into spaces or being a farm person, at some point of time I'll be like, Uganda is democratic. Because this is our country, and us as the youth, we have, like, we no longer have some rights. We no longer have rights to speak. We no longer have rights to do some other things. Yeah. So if we give attention to such a statement from a person who has been tweeting actually different things which we shouldn't be giving time, then we are forgetting our purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. We're forgetting our purpose. Reagan,
Yes.
you yourself, you're currently a leader, but also I reckon you have ambitions of possibly being a leader in this country as well. And just from what Joan has been talking about, it's potentially something that I think I would love to hint on. I would like you to hint on right now. A possibility of, before we started the show, I was having a conversation with Thomas that you may find Thomas, you find Joan, you find Alex could want possibly to be a president of this country in the next 10 or 20 years to come. But such a statement is uttered. And in my analysis, as like looking at our history, we have not had, besides Dr. Milton Obote, a civilian president over the years. 62 years down the road and counting. Will there be a possibility even, because at the moment it looks like the system has been greatly entrenched with a militarized regime. A friend of mine once told me that, Drake, we are headed for an Egypt. The reason that's why he said we are headed for an Egypt, this is what he said. In Egypt, those days in Egypt, the agriculture sector was greatly dominated by the military. They were in charge of the agribusiness. They were in charge of manufacturing. They are in charge of government contracts, which is happening the same in this country right now. You find that the constructions are being done by the UPDF, which is okay because it's a disciplined force. But slowly, it's becoming a norm, and we are slowly accepting it, which would possibly even culminate into our politics. So what does that present for a youth leader such as yourself, but also for other young people who are eyeing political positions and the possibility of a much more bleaker future when it comes to leadership?
Well, thank you, Drake. Permit me to deviate a bit. I have a point Alex made, and when I look at it from the surveying perspective, I'm a year 4, same status student of land surveying. The biggest cause, for example, of land dispute in Central Region is the Milo tenure, which separates ownership of a parcel and ownership of the property on the parcel. I'm Reagan Mwebesa. You cannot at any one point take away my opinion and say this is Reagan's opinion, and then take away the other bit and you say this is the guild president's opinion. When you hold a position in this country, in public relations, we expect you to live to a certain stature.
Definitely.
Because whatever actions you take can cost us as a country and a force at large. So saying the Constitution of Uganda empowers the CDF in his persona to say and make statements as General MK or as Muhoozi Kainerugaba is not right. Because we as Ugandans on that Twitter platform, we don't follow Kainerugaba, we follow the CDF. We follow what he has to offer for Ugandans. That aside, when such a statement is made, and a young person like myself and so many others who are aspiring to lead this nation watch, it is really belittling. But one thing I'm very certain is that the statistics don't lie. Numbers do not lie. Uganda is dominated by a huge population of the young people, majority of whom may never enroll to the forces. So, in a scenario where you find that we still have the chance of the majority to decide who leads this country, that statement can't be achieved. But I also want to believe that that statement is supposed to inform Ugandans that we have been under military capture. That for so long you've thought that you have rights. For so long you're very mistaken that you have a right to vote and to decide. But in actual sense, you don't. That is also supposed to show you that it is of course absurd that you find they are trying to dominate every single bit of the country, from construction, from health, from agriculture. They are there. But when we look at the professional side of it, they are not there. When we look at the political side of it, they won't be there. So in as much as they will try to dominate, and I know it would be their wish that they can be as many as possible to dominate every single sector, we will always outnumber them. That I can always assure everyone, because not everyone will be in the forces. At least some of us need to run these other sectors where they are limited by the Constitution of Uganda. But making such a statement, regardless of which angle and perspective he's making it, we will look at it as scientists who are looking at the ground from above, and not architects who are looking at it from an angle. We will wholesomely focus on it, delve deep in it. And I want to really urge young people not to take such statements lightly, because we don't know how we got here. Our parents may say it's their effort. The ones leading the country may say it's their blood and liberation. But I want to tell you, none of us knows where we are going. The country has a vision. Districts have visions. Planning authorities have visions. And we have individual visions. They can envision as much as they can. But one thing I'm certain and very sure is that that statement is not calculated. And that statement can't be taken lightly. And it's supposed to even inspire my fellow young people that we need to now prove otherwise. That if we have been under military capture, if we have been trying not to conform to the actual rule of law, we need to bring back this country to the rule of law. You know, it's usually, it brings a smile on my face when a good number of the young people are sane-minded, are in school. That means that there is no level of impunity that is going to divert most of the young people off the cause of Uganda. I attended a General Aronda Memorial service where General Kahinda Otafire said, we formed Uganda here. We will leave Uganda here. I just pray that this message, in this education we are pursuing, majority of the young people can sit at the back of our minds. That they will say as much as they can, but no one can stop a plant from germinating or springing out of the soil. You can play whatever games, but what has been planted will germinate if it is to germinate and pick it seriously. So I know this statement is really demeaning and belittling, but I know the young people won't take it lightly, neither will I and so many others. Regardless of which perspective the general said it, we will take it seriously and we shall actively involve ourselves in the transformation of our country.
Thank you. As you're making a submission, I see Alex is smiling and I think he's boiling to say something, but I'll get to you. Let me just quickly get to Thomas and try to understand now this deeper and further. I just want us to interrogate our democracy in its own self, juxtaposing it with the ongoing military government that we have in place. The principles or the values or the cores that inform a democratic state, one could argue that Uganda is a democratic state. Among the pillars of the National Resistance Army now movement, they have pillars or values entrenched in democracy. That being said, let us look at the current state. When people are peacefully demonstrating, what is involved? The military is involved, the police is involved to weigh down the views of the people. One would then therefore argue and say, we are not a democratic state, we are a military state. That is just one example. Someone goes ahead and says, a young person, Facebook has been closed for now close to 3-4 years, and want to run business, I cannot access it without VPN. And all those are angles that could possibly stifle free speech. One would argue that that is narrowing down democracy. But other person would argue that no, they are trying to manage the situation and keep it upright, to be peaceful. But what I want us to understand is the military governance in this country. How deeply entrenched is it to the extent of stifling down the actual cause and foundations of democracy? And should we really, as young people, be worried that much?
Sure. Yes. We should be worried because let me take you to United Kingdom when the Prime Minister then, Boris, had that party. Remember that party that leaked and during COVID time? Because if you're to say that you saw how they prosecuted him and how they told him to step down immediately because of just a mere party. Can we have the same thing here in Uganda, where such a statement with such that has this magnitude of crisis? Can we now say that no, let the military court someone, the CDF, and put him down? Is that possible? Do you think it's possible? If the problem we have with Uganda is that the first family has managed to be everywhere. You look at the education system. The first lady is the
minister.
The minister, and then you look at how the education in higher institutions is being micromanaged. No strikes, no strikes. You strike, you're put down. Institutions are being made as if they're secondary schools, where a mindset is not led to grow. Because what makes intelligent human beings, and I said this last time, is the freedom you give them at university to explore their mind and freedom. That is what nurtures us into what we are going to become in the future. But this is going to instill fear, and we cannot talk about such things. Look at how you've seen the different case. You looked at when they rioted, the judiciary was waiting for them. Immediately you're caught, you're taken to court. At 7 p.m. you're taken to court. Yet there are cases that have been there for years and years, and they have not been worked on. Are they working on someone's directives that no? Because when you talk about democracy, you're talking about the pillar of democracy is the separation of power, in the sense that we are supposed to have 3 arms of government, where the judiciary, once appointed, they can now summon the executive and tell them, no, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. But that can't happen here in Uganda. We look at how fast the petition of the Honorable Sechikubu ran, how fast it was processed in court. You look at the judgment of the case. You see how they were trying to hide a few things here and there. Are we in a democratic state, really? You look at where we don't have youth that can come up and fully participate in rights or in speaking up for other youth. You look at people disappearing, and still people asking for people that disappeared. We don't know where they went. They're not in prison. They're somewhere, but no one knows where. And you look at people on the floor of parliament speaking about different things. You look at how they appointed an ex-criminal, one that was rehabilitated, and one said that in order to catch a thief, you must choose a thief. That is why they're appointing. And yet there is a law that says that once a criminal, you cannot be appointed to certain roles. So are we... I think the stem of the problem is, should the first family be moved away from? Should the first family just be a first family in the country?
Is that even possible anyway?
It is possible. It is possible. I don't think it is possible here in Africa, but why can't we pick a leaf? Don't we want to move forward as a country? When someone says that you have to separate the 2 people, then that causes a problem, because I don't believe the person who can say that once they go to power, they're going to do what is right for the people. that means that now they're going to prioritize their own interests as long as they have the army. But what you forget, we are 48 million. And we only have around thousands, 100,000 of the army and the police. So in the long run, the civilian can wake up one morning and fight for what is right.
Okay, interesting. Alex, just as when Reagan was making his submissions, I saw you were smiling. So you could quickly respond to that. But as you respond to that, I would now also like to drag the conversation deeper into understanding this issue. That militarism is a component that has greatly been appreciated and taken course in most of these African countries. Uganda, then Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan. You have the likes of Niger in the Sahel region, among other countries. And that's a problem that I'm seeing it's plaguing most African countries, notwithstanding or setting aside Uganda. And looking at the case study here, which is Uganda, military governments have greatly stifled the rights of the people. And from his analysis, he greatly shows us how the first family has a hand in most of these institutions. Education, the army. And now, more than ever, in my opinion, the future seems to be extremely bleak. Now, what I just want you to help us interrogate and understand further is a possibility of a democratic state.
Okay, I don't believe the future is a bleak. We are the young people of this country.
Yeah.
You see, in every state, the shapers of the future are the people that are at their peak of thinking, and it's this age group. You get? I will slightly in 30 seconds revert to Comrade Reagan. We expect every leader, whenever they take up office, to act professionally, like what demands of that office. Now, when you don't act professionally, we expect you to resign or give us an explanation. If you don't, then we go to your appointing power. We have no problem with you. That is how you're raised, that is how you're groomed, that is how you think leadership is if you failed to change. You understand? Now, I want to drive our young people to stop discussing Mohozi. He's not the problem. We have the bigger problem, who is the president. And those leaders we have in parliament. They have all the powers. You understand? Now, if they're not doing anything about the status quo, we have no problem with this man. For them, they still feel he's the right man for the job. Now, if we cannot push them to pull this man out, then we are also going to be there in hearsay and discuss that as years are moving on until our prime thinking age goes off. You get? Now, as a young generation, I think personally, you see, when a country is in a state when the country is in a position where they are pushed to the corners, like what happened before the current regime came in power, they opt for anything. They just need the hope. Because they are a hopeless society. They need that one person that is going to give them hope. The young people of this country, when you read President Museveni's book, these people were young people that knew their problems, but also brainstormed the solutions to their problems. It wasn't a matter of let us discuss our problems and then we march back home and we see what to do. You get? Okay, Obote is so powerful. He has the state power. He has what should we do? Should we sit? You understand? So they found their ways out. In there you serve the other university students, African Liberation Front at University of Dar es Salaam. You get? So they organize themselves. They think, they brainstorm for what they can do for this country. They finish their courses, they come and get entrenched into the government.
Do you think anyway that can happen for our generation?
Yes, I'm still coming. Now, with the hope that when they get into government, they can change some of the things. One, that is the first step that some of the young people might be having. That, the permanent secretary of this ministry is corrupt, but when I become PS, maybe things will change. You understand? We have seen some people make wonders, and we are shocked. When General Ronda was still living, the Ministry of Internal Affairs was a noble ministry. It was a case study for other people to benchmark. He showed us that it's possible. You understand? Now, when these people realized they can't, they had to look for option 2, which you might believe in or not.
Yeah.
It's up to you. You get? Personally, I don't believe it's the line, because the times have changed. We are not in 1986. We are not in that time. The times have changed. Much as I don't believe it's the line, I believe the young people of this country, if they put their minds together, they can brainstorm the solution to the problems that we have as a country. But so long as we are still discussing science and seeing science as the problem, you understand? If we are still seeing that there is a delay in justice, lawyers say justice delayed is justice denied. But so long as we still discuss that there is a delay in justice, therefore this country is written, then we march back home and we sit. You get? Then we think the Chief Justice is so big, he's connected to the president, then we cannot do something about him. I think if you sit and you brainstorm, a solution will always come. Now, where the problem is coming is the president sets a narrative for the young people that gives us 3-4 months of discussing. And in that time frame, we are not brainstorming our solutions. You understand? How we are getting out of the mess that we are in. So we end up moving on like that. As this narrative goes off, they bring another one. As this goes off, another one comes in. And time is going. You get? Now, me, what I believe, as young people, we need to set our minds towards the country that we want. How do you want the legal sector? How do you want the industry sector? How do I expect the health sector to be in this country? How do I expect the education sector to be in this country? And if I anticipate that the education sector should be of this kind, what have I done as me in my individual capacity to move towards that, other than just talking about it? I come from Bududa. I attended to a school where we pay 80,000 shillings per term, and 60% of students in those classes are fees defaulters. 80,000 shillings, Ugandan shillings. That means 60% out of every 100 families in that class, 60 families cannot afford 80,000 shillings in 4 months. Now, if we are living in a country where we want to transform our people economically, what am I doing about the state of people in Bududa who are having coffee, a very prestigious crop, you understand? But they are not getting the best of it.
We shall come to that later on interrogating those critical issues that you're trying to bring, just when we get back from the break. But before we go into the break, I'd just like to engage Joan. And my interest is primarily on the involvement of girls and women in our political space. But something that also I'd like to understand further is, looking at our history entirely, we have barely seen an involvement of women. But thanks to the current government, the constitution is one that propels or promotes the emancipation and involvement of women in politics. But even as servicemen and women in UPDF, the army is one entity that also still has a very small number of women, but similarly also with leadership in terms of politics. Could such a statement stifle the involvement of women in politics further?
All right, so my point of view, we have women in leadership, we have women who are civilians, we have women everywhere, and we thank God for that, because if we look at where our parents came from, it was different and it was not right. So having women on board, I believe we have also seen women who have done good, and we've also seen women who are not doing good. So that perspective of what a woman can do, a man can do, or what a man can do, a woman can do. So I believe we are equal. That's my belief. And I believe what a man can do or what he can do, I can also do it.
2 times better.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it can happen. It can happen. I do something better than you do it. And you're doing the same thing.
2 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I believe if our current president is a man, I believe a female can also become a president of Uganda. And I believe she can actually do better than a man.
Anyway, considering from statistics in terms of what is happening in our neighboring country like Tanzania, that already sets, Tanzania is actually doing better. From what Magufuli did in trying to, first of all, mentor Suhulu into power, but also considering the growth of the GDP, it shows. But I think in my opinion, I would rather say that first and foremost, we need to emancipate our women in terms of moving them from point of ignorance to the point of knowledge. I think that is where we still face a lot of bedrock in trying to emancipate the minds of our women. But
I think I have a small problem with the women discussion. Women, youth, those special interest groups.
yeah,
But we are not special.
Yeah, women
believe
they
we
are
are
special interest groups.
Just
Women,
that people believe we are special.
but
we are not.
that's how they are categorized.
categorized.
They always give, okay, the groups that are given affirmative action. Now, I don't believe just because you are a young man, then you deserve a seat on a table discussing issues of young people. You get? Just because you're a woman, then you deserve a seat on a table discussing women. I believe, I'm an advocate of women empowerment, and I hate feminists. You get? Feminists advocate for women. Just have women on the table.
Doesn't that then negate you are not a feminist, but you stand for women emancipation?
Now what I stand for is, I want my sister, my girlfriend, my daughter, my niece to be as very powerful that she does not need to tell people that she's a woman to outcompete a man. You understand? Now that is the narrative I want to bring in, so that if we keep pushing that just because you are a youth or you are a woman, then go there, we are going to face some problems. But can we nurture these youths? Can we nurture these women? Can we make them competent enough that for Joan to outcompete me in any position, she doesn't need to first mention that she's a woman?
You're proposing the idea of meritocracy over the essence of just playing the gender card.
Yes.
But nonetheless, let's just go for a quick break and we'll be right back to discuss further this particular conversation. See you in a bit.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that break. Just before we went into the break, we were discussing the possibility whether Uganda has a bleak future, considering the comments made by the CDF, the Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Just before we went into the break, we were greatly discussing a military rule in this country and a potential feudal state that we are possibly entering into. But Thomas, let's just now look into this further. A Kampala city lawyer has dragged the first family, the president, General Salim Saleh, Mama Janet Museveni, and the fourth respondent in the case is the AG himself, Mr. Chirio Wachiwanuka. And the allegations are being made that we have persons of the same family holding positions, but also more like they're contravening the law because they have already positions in the executive, but much more like Uganda is becoming state run by family. And that alone still relates, it's still not far away from the comments that are being made by the CDF. Now let us understand this. Understanding that we are potentially in a military government or in a military rule at this point in time, the governance of this country is much more primarily now being cornered or run by one family. That all the central decisions in this country need to be run through the Holy Trinity. Father, Son, and the Father, the Son, and the wife. Or even not the wife, the Father, the Son, and the brother. So that's the Holy Trinity at this point in time. That you cannot make any particular decision without the Holy Trinity, knowing that this is what we want or this is not what we want. So let us interrogate this. What does this mean for our democracy in its own self?
Then that means you are disrespecting the word democracy, because you cannot give me such a preamble that and you pose such a question.
Yeah.
Then that means you already know that we don't have any democracy. Look at a case where you know that the education has produced the brightest, and you've also used the path of education when you are in Kenya, when you are in that association of the students you're with. The minds to solve the problems that were there then came through the institutions, what the institutions were telling you, the nurturing you got from then the president that nurtured you to become what you are. And then you impose strict rules on them, on how they should behave, on what they should do and what they should not do. Then that means you're breaking the spirits of the students. Then that means that you are breaking the patriotism that is within them and has to come out at this particular time. Like the gentleman said, Alex, this is the prime. This is when the ideas become more refurbished. This is when we get a beautiful perspective of what we want the world to be. But if you're put on heavy restrictions, that when there is something wrong, like the tuition increment we're talking about, and then you stand up and then you're subjected to either chasing you, then that means that now you're not going to broaden your thinking, but you're going to limit it to know this is what needs to be done by this particular group of people. And then I think being the first lady alone is a job on its own. And now you're serving in two positions. You're the Minister of Education and at the same time you're the First Lady. Then can't you be First Lady alone and still make a contribution to the country through that line? Can't you still be the first son alone and make your own contribution to the country other than becoming a first son and then a CDF to the country? Then we look at what the speaker, the one that is protecting, they always say the speaker is the one that always holds the constitution and protects it and would always, But you heard the statement she made when she was, when they were giving His Excellency a tour. What the father says, what the son says is what we shall do. We are for the son and the father. That is a very big statement for this country, for a person that's supposed to be neutral and preside over
an institution of parliament.
Exactly. Then that means we're in danger as a country. And some people may not look at it now and say we're in danger, but we're in danger. And then that means there is no future. There is no foreseeable future. Because you see, the Uganda has restricted I don't want us to go back. The gentleman was saying that we cannot go back to 1996 where we're going to hold guns and go to war. But then what else are we going to do if a country where it is the protests that work? You've seen in European countries, protests move. When women say we are standing today here, they put up the flyers, cards. You see that something changes. The people that are elected into the positions go into panic, and they try to rectify the issue as soon as possible. But here, once you do the same, they're going to criminalize. I always say the problem is, you don't solve the problem by criminalizing the protest, but rather, what are these people talking about? Can we address the issue? But they can't, because the people in power are now afraid. They are afraid that in case of any uprising, may spark. And once we manage as the civilians to raise more than 1 million people to go on streets, then we have exceeded the army, because the army is in hundreds of thousands. Now imagine if 2 million people are on streets. Are you going to kill all those? Are you going to shoot them down? It is impossible. Then that means now they are very, very, because of how they have handled the country, now they are in a crisis mode. Anything that comes up as an uprising, especially from institutions, the fighting for justice and corruption, they will rush immediately. When you look at the case of Kenya, you saw that the president cannot call the army without the writing to the judiciary. And you saw once they wrote to the judiciary said, no, it is not going to happen. Here, I cannot even imagine a country like Uganda having such people, the judiciary having such power. It is impossible.
Definitely.
That's why I wonder where they benchmark from. You know, at the break I've been talking about J.J. Rawlings, the president of Ghana. How you see when the term limit came, when they saw that the age limit was almost, he didn't go back to the constitution to change it so that he stays in power. He said, no, now the time is for me to respect the constitution of the country and now move on. And he's regarded as one of the best. I believe if the president of Uganda did the same when the age was almost, and then he said, no, I am endorsing this candidate, not even handing over the country to then his greatest opposition, Dr. Kizza Besigye, he would have gotten his own candidate, that he had nurtured from 86, because that is what a good leader is. You should nurture. Then leave the country, advise where necessary. No, I fought for this country's liberation. Look at how people praise Nelson Mandela. His statute of what we all want everything to be. And look at the trend that, regardless, I may not say that they are well off, but they change. You see change of presidents. Yes, this is a country that was just liberated in 1990. I think it's 94. Yes, but they have progressed in terms of, democracy itself.
They actually celebrated 30 years.
And how many presidents do they have?
In power. They have changed over 5 presidents.
And how many presidents does Uganda have?
Ever since I was born, I've only seen one president. I believe all of us on this panel have seen one.
But do you think that, personally, I believe General Monto can rule this country very well. I believe
you sound to be a card of ant, but let me just let me just hold you there. I'd get to Reagan. Reagan, as we're in this half of the show, I'd like us to put some hope as well in this country in terms of a possibility of a brighter future. Not all hope is lost, and even in the darkest of clouds, there's always a silver lining. What is that hope that still runs across this country that presents us maybe with a possible brighter future?
I think the biggest gift President Museveni has given to the young people are the recent appointments of young people to ministerial positions. Yeah. I don't know whether it is politics, because, for example, at the institutional level, we usually play some kinds of politics like those to manage the population. However, I do believe that from what is happening to our neighbors, then we are not very far away from the promised Uganda we all want to see. You saw in Kenya, young people stand boldly and tell the president, Mr. President, we are not scared of you. Uganda is not very far away from that if things keep the way they are. Unfortunately, in the Ugandan system, we celebrate failure more than achievement. Very sad reality, but very true. you find the Ministry of Education declaring results from marking, but huge smiles come on people's faces when they say the whole country, 7 people have an A in biology. Yet in actual sense, we want A students to work on us as doctors in future. In a Ugandan setting, we perform very well with scolding than congratulating. But as days and years unfold, I have learned to accept that not all is lost. If we adopt the good and leave the bad, then we will keep on the right track. And like I had earlier said, I am not, of course, very impressed with the biggest dominant parties in opposition, given the lack of ideals and ideologies, especially those that blend well with the interests of the young people, because that could be a topic for another day. But based on the nurturing and the mentorship spaces available, I think it is only in higher institutions that I have come to interact with multiple people who are training and branding young people to be better people. Young people themselves have taken initiative. There is, for example, the New Bold Vision. There is named Multi-Party Democracy Institute. There is Uganda Democracy Academy, and so many others who have picked interest in shaping these young people. 27 young men in the year of 1980 went to the bush and delivered the Uganda we've all watched for close to 40 years today. Lucky enough, most of them were elite and studied. Today, the statistics don't lie that big numbers of young people have studied, acquired education, and are actively involved in politics. That is why you find even platforms that are really not supposed to be very relevant, because I don't think the government of Uganda communicates to Ugandans through Twitter. But because so many informed young people are on the platform, they tend to override on the information that is circulated. So not all is lost. And so many young people are awake. And that gives me hope that there is a Uganda that we are yet to see. You know, generations have transited and we are at a point where we can't predict the current generation. There is no amount of predictive analysis that you can do and you say you understand what these young people can do today. The only thing we have to do is that let's keep our arms crossed, heads straight. I usually tell my brothers and sisters that let's keep more sober, because when change comes, it knows no resistance. And going forward, I'm very certain that the future of Uganda is bright, because we could be the lucky few who have gotten the chance to share from this platform, but so many others that will tune in and so many others that will listen to our voices will have a blend with what we are saying, because we are the young people who will transform this country.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Powerful. Joan, still on the same message of trying to preach, as well, besides the bleak future that we have spoken about, I still think there is a ray of hope for the future that this country is yet to see. What is your say on the same, particularly on grounds that he has said that there are very many avenues that is mentoring very many young people? So what do you think and what do you say on grounds of growth and in terms of nurturing of young people for a better Uganda?
All right. So looking at my generation, which we believe it's the generation that is going to lead the future, I believe we have a bleak future. Apparently, if I'm talking about the future, it might be 2030, it might be 2035. So I believe we still have a long way to go. with the wounds that we have, because this government has ruled for so many years. And as you've said, we can't predict what the youth can do right now. But still, we can't predict what the government can do. Because we had very many people who believed that the CDF was coming on ballot come the next general elections. But he's not coming. And we had some people who are not believing it. But apparently, if you tell someone you didn't believe he was coming, they will believe you're just lying. Or maybe you want to show that you believe or something else. So let me dive you back to the March to Parliament scenario. Actually, I was so disappointed in my generation and our elders. Looking at a time where you would just put a status talking about the March to Parliament, and everyone you call your friends or people who you're looking at as the next leaders, telling you that it's not the right thing to do. And to my disappointment, it wasn't even 50% of the youth marching to Parliament. When we are saying this is a country that has more youth than the old generation. So I believe we still have a long way to go. We have to bring that patriotism into ourselves, because I, for one, during the March to Parliament, that is where I was watching where Uganda has reached, what's the status quo. Are us as the youth, are we cooperative or can we do something?
Yeah.
But when I saw 5 people marching to Parliament, I was so disappointed. And when I saw my parents calling me and advising me not to march to Parliament, yeah, we had nothing to do. But if our elders are still telling us, or if you go back home and your parents are telling you, you're not supposed to go into politics, it's dirty. We believe it's dirty, but how are we going to live without politics?
True.
We have to prepare ourselves for our generation and the coming generation. So I believe we still have so many years that I can't predict, or I don't know. Because imagine right now, Museveni comes in, or His Excellency comes in the next electoral season, and then, is it 2030 what?
2031.
2031, or God forbid, I wouldn't want it to be like that. That's the truth in camera. General Mhoz comes in as a president. At that point, we have to wonder, is he really going to take over, or will he rule? Or are the civilians going to come up with ideas? But if we are still the generation that is not patriotic, I don't believe we are going to do so much. We are just going to talk. We are going to raise ideas. We are going to form NGOs, are going to support us. We are going to even bring on board ideas. But if we cannot be patriotic and say, we are marching to Parliament, or, because I used to see that during my high school, my O-level. They come to your class, you're in senior one, and they tell you, all of you, we are moving. If you don't want this, or if we are not believing the school is doing well, we are all moving, and you won't find anyone in class. So they won't, they can't blame anyone. As he said, you're not going to kill over 4.8 millions of people rioting. But if we still have a generation that is going to put up a riot, let me say, and 5 people are going to walk in a certain district, and they're going to be taken to courts of law, then those are the people that walked to Parliament, meaning the rest of us are supporting the government. So if the government is saying, you are not supposed to walk to Parliament, and you believe you can't walk because you're scared, they are going to tear gas you, they are going to, or even like...
But isn't that the conversation that we're having, that we are already run by a military government that instills fear?
So we are not
So even when someone is democratic, the virtual fact that, see how your parents call you and are telling you, don't do this, don't do that, it's because they value what they call life. And they know the state will go all guns blazing, whatever is necessary to keep the so-called peace. Yeah, and it wouldn't matter whether you're patriotic or not. And I know that is the price we pay for freedom, but at what cost? Because you understand that our generation is one that is well studied and educated, and our parents, of course, with the cost of education in this country, which is which is quite exorbitant. Parents have paid, parents have sold their properties to educate you, telling you, you know what, Kakana, don't go anywhere, stay home. Even if you're patriotic, if your parent called you and told you, hey, do not go for this, do not go for that, you think about it. So maybe I think what, in my opinion, that needs I really prefer engagement and conversation.
I think
Yeah.
we need to define the word patriotism.
True.
Because the larger picture in a Ugandan context is pretense.
Yeah.
Where we run to media platforms, and if we scan through, majority of us make fun of our country, make fun of our ministers, never defend the country. And unfortunately, even the opposition people that we look up to maybe take over after this government has left, do the same.
But Reagan, have you asked yourself this question? Why do you think the young people make those memes, crack those jokes, write all those negative things, some of them write about the government? Why?
Me, I think.
Let me give slightly my opinion. I think it is because it may not necessarily be defined as patriotism, lack of patriotism. No. I think it's because we are transiting in a generation where we follow what is trending. Even if it's obscene, even if it's immoral, even if it is, you find a student, for example, joking about a university where he is pursuing a degree. Yet in actual sense, when this gentleman walks out of this place seeking a bright future, some of these statements will affect the academic
context of what kind of joke they make about their countries, about their ministers. Where do they drive that joke from?
You see,
then that would drive our discussion to whether it's patriotism or being unpatriotic.
A good example. A car overturns on a bad road. Instead of us running to pinpoint who is supposed to have solved that, a good fraction of us, that's Uganda. That's how we are. We are Uganda.
In literature, there's what the term is sarcasm. And you got very many young people
very sarcastic.
Are sarcastic in that manner, even when they do not know that they're being sarcastic. And that is the way how people now speak to the government. Look at Professor, what's his name? The gentleman who draws cartoons.
Dr. Spire.
Dr. Spire, yes. Dr. Spire's cartoons speaks volumes. I think you guys saw that cartoon he drew, where there's a bus of PLU and General Mwozi Kainerugaba has come out of the bus with the wheel and says, and there's a poster saying 2026, it says 200 kilometers ahead. Then Mwozi is there saying that Muse has said, we stop the bus and the rest of you walk. He's going back. Now, in our pain, Ugandans are using their satire to pass out the pain that they're experiencing. And I think the point that she's trying to make, which in my opinion I would somewhat sidestep away from it and say, you know what we Ugandans are experiencing, we are using our agony to make satirical statements that manifest the reality. And the reality is we are faced with numerous defaults in our government. Look at the roads, look at the hospitals. Generally, everything is almost a mess. And we are paying crazy taxes. Someone is earning, let's say, 1.2 and you end up getting like only 700 or 800 and you're paying all those taxes. And are those taxes delivering? The example that you used, let's say there's a student at your institution. Someone is making a joke about the institution. They're paying tuition. And you expect, since it's a government institution, they expect that tuition to work the magic and provide those services. If they're not providing those services, don't they have the right to speak against that? They do. So I think, in my opinion, people are democratic. But where do you then draw the line with the patriotism? If at all you do not have something to hold dearest to your heart about your country,
you see, Drake,
then
I have been to every East African country, and so many African countries. I have interacted with multiple American professors at a personal level, virtually, and I have learned one thing. Our country lacks public relations. A case in point.
What do you mean?
The government, of course. A case in point is the shootings that happen in the US. You hardly know about them on a daily basis because of mental health issues. On a daily,
but deep in the US, the citizens know about them.
But they do not portray that on the portals or on any platform to taint the image of their country. You get my argument?
Anyway, let us not go there.
For us, we have a vast experience in posting negative about our country.
When you take over a widow, you have no control over what the orphan will say about you.
Very true.
You understand? When you push the citizens of a country into a position of hating the government, you have no control of their words on your actions as a state. You understand? So their words and actions can never be regarded unpatriotic unless they are attacking the infrastructure, the long and infrastructure of a state. I would never agree with young people going to ban the parliament because I know what it takes for an African state to build a parliament. You understand? But I will never condemn a young girl from abusing the Speaker of Parliament because she has shown that she cannot be a clear representation of her. Now, if you want to hold these people accountable, then you give them what they expect out of you. Because then they have no excuse of tainting a bad image for the country.
You see, my brother.
But now, you as a leader yourself, you've already tainted a bad image for the country.
Mr. Moderator, I have been a student leader for 11 months now with my brother Thomas. But I can tell you the hardest thing to be is to be in government. Balancing expectations of the voter vis-a-vis what you can deliver is different. When we dwell from a country that exists on taxes, donations and aid, then we just need to think about transforming our country. But given the context within which we are operating, I know it is tight for the people who are controlling this country. Of course, there are questions we pose, very unfortunate questions, why some offices have donation budgets bigger than budgets of institutions of higher learning. It is a question that we can answer another day. But as someone who has been in a leadership position and I've found myself in a position where I cannot execute, because in the principles of leadership, there is where you should delegate and empower those below you to execute the work. But in the event where the head is constrained, I feel pain for the delegates. Likewise, in the Ugandan context, where you find wrong and so bad state of hospitals, and we put the minister in check. But in actual sense, even the president himself has nothing he can offer except to give us political promises. The reality at the end of the day is that reality sets in when expectations are bigger than what you can deliver, and that is what happens in a political context. But I know and I hope one day a very intelligent professor from Kenya, Rumumba, said if the politics in the country and leadership are more profitable than any other sector, then that country is headed for doom. Very unfortunate. In Uganda, we can lack money, for example, to pay interns. I think the patriotism we need to talk about, by the way, is from our leaders themselves, who appropriate much to themselves and little to the sectors that matter. If we break it down as far as from the people that lead us to deep to where we come from, then we'll be in a better position. Thank you.
Thank you. You have some, as you make that point, give your concluding remarks.
Yes, you see, Drake, we in institutions have those above us, and we have acts and laws that govern us and constrain our powers. So that means that what you promise or what the population expects you to do is confined to those laws and acts. Now we are looking at a country where we have 3 separate arms of government, but they are all, you say, we talk about they are pretending that they have, they are independent, but they all look at one person for approval for everything they do. You saw how the legislators tried to use that appropriation rule, where they appropriate funds and divert funds, and because as legislators in the budget, that is what you can do. But you saw how he brought it back and said, no, this and this and this and this, take it back where it was. And even though they were putting it in hospitals, education, they diverted it back to where it was supposed to go, to Rocco, to the pharmaceutical company. And now you ask yourself a question: which powers do they have? Which powers of separation do they have? As I conclude, we are waiting for a person that is going to step up, but I don't believe that once a person that we know, as we all know, that the CDF currently, and we have seen how he reacts to certain things, I don't think that we shall have the freedom we have right now if he's the one in power. So, I mean, we should, and as he has said, that once you see such things happening, then that means you're heading for doom. I always tell people that legislators, if MPs, we said now that MPs are getting 500,000 and LC5 chairpersons are getting 5 billion, do you think the MPs would stay in parliament, or would they run for LC5? That is the question of patriotism. Because in patriotism, you're supposed to defend the country or the state and not the government. You're supposed to be looking out for the people.
Okay. Alex, your concluding remarks.
I think it will be a little long because I didn't get my second round of. But I'll use the shortest time possible. I want to believe that we aspire for a country that is like some developed countries, like we've been giving examples, but we're not ready to go through that process that leads us there. One, I think we shall need to have a very strict president for us to go there. The Tanzania had a Magufuli. People discuss him by the achievements. They don't know how strict his government was in terms to implementation of policies. Very many people will hate the process, but it's a matter of sacrifice towards what we want to achieve. Then two, if we agree that we are living in a military government, abnormal times do not call for normal solutions. You understand? I personally didn't march to parliament, but I supported those that did. I was an activist. I have 3 suspension letters in my undergrad and 2 warning letters. But I stopped activism because my last 2 suspensions, still it never yielded. I don't take part to a process that I think will not yield just to make a statement. So I think if we are living in a military state, we need to sit and brainstorm. As I said, we are at the prime of our thinking, sit, brainstorm, and find solutions on how to get out of this. Now, in conclusion, getting back to the topic, basing on the CDF's post and a projection of our future, is it bleak or not? The answer is in the hands of the young people of this country. It's not mine to decide You choose whether we shall change education, health, and all other sectors, or we shall keep on lamenting on their state and we wait. And if we choose that, still fate will tell where we are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Reagan,
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
your concluding remarks on that?
My concluding remarks, of course, nothing is painful for a politician like concluding. We usually love to keep talking. But a statement like the one the CDF made, I don't take it lightly. But because we are focusing on taking Uganda forward, we will ignore our media platforms because, after all, Twitter hardly pays us or contributes to our GDP. And it can't be a product of export. So moving forward, I want to really encourage, I'm just starting to sound like a parent, but I want to really encourage my fellow young people that we have not lost it all. Statements like those are supposed to present themselves like opportunities to a dog when put in a corner. You see, when it has been looking for a chance to bite you, it will just wait for you to corner it one day and it will show you what it can do. So we have been cornered. We have been shown that these people think they know what we can do. Let us channel our energies towards the positive we can achieve, bearing in mind what my brother has just said. Let us always have an estimate of what we can achieve. And don't be over-ambitious. As a mathematician, we have a topic called integration where we have limits within which we fall. The lower limit or the upper limit. If we can do something within these limits, or something that at least equals the upper limit or the maximum of what we can achieve, Uganda will be a better place. And that is what I encourage my brothers and sisters out there, that there are limits within which we can achieve. Let us not really think that we can create limits. Given the stature and state of Uganda, we can use the limits available to achieve a success, which is the upper limit, and move forward. Thank you so much.
Last but not least, the lady, concluding remarks.
Okay, so I believe we are the future because our statistics show that we are large in numbers. So let us not be scared of such a tweet from a person that we know that has been definitely saying things that are not right or that we don't expect him to say. Let us look at transforming ourselves. Let us look at better things, and I believe we can achieve this. I believe as a civilian can come into power, and I believe it can be soon or later, but I believe our generation has a lot of things to do. We really have a lot to do. So something I would conclude with is, let us not give, people are saying we shouldn't take it lightly, but from the person that said it, my belief is we can do better. We can look at things like infrastructure, we can look at things like health, mentorship, and patriotism, rather than looking at such a statement from a person that has been saying nuisance, as I may call it. So I don't have a lot of things to conclude with. The only thing I say, let us look at more important things than just a statement from a person that we don't believe in.
All right, thank you. As I've heard it from the panelists and there, it's been an interesting conversation, and thank you very much, Thomas, Reagan, Joan, and Alex, for taking time and joining us in this very interesting and intriguing conversation. This is the Inter-University Debates, and brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. Technical crew, Pal, Whitney, and Ronald, thank you very much for making this possible. And to you, our dear esteemed viewers, keep watching and keep following us. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.